thing on? All right, well, my watch says 6 o'clock. Welcome to the third and final candidates forum hosted by the League of Women Voters of Greater Peoria, the Pekin Area Chamber of Commerce, the Pekin Public Library, and the Dirksen Congressional Center. I'm Tiffany White. I'm the director of the Dirksen Congressional Center, and on behalf of tonight's organizers and partners, it is my privilege to welcome you back this evening for, again, our final debate of the season. I'd like to acknowledge some individuals in the room who have made possible this series of events. Michelle Bohm, who is with the League of Women Voters, is here in the front, and she is also responsible for the live stream that is accommodating our remote viewers. John Ackerman, our county clerk, he is really the architect of this evening's style of debate, and we thank him for the contribution that he has made to this event. Amy McCoy, who is the director of the Pekin Area Chamber of Commerce, is here. Heather Robertson, who is the director of the Pekin United Way, is here. Shannon Sandoval, who wears a lot of hats and has too many titles to count, is also here. And of course, we want to thank our library staff for their contribution to the setup and the facilitation of the venue. And on that note, I'd like to remind you that the library closes promptly at 8 p.m. this evening, and that is when our event ends. So at the conclusion of the event, let's be good neighbors to the library staff and scoot out of here so that they can get home to their families. I know it's fun to linger after something like this, and if you want to catch up with each other, please do so in the parking lot.
In the rain.
We have a lot of ground we'd like to cover tonight in a relatively short period of time. Of course, there will be questions that you wish we would have asked that we didn't, because that's the way these things go. We can't make everybody happy, but we do hope that the 4.5 cumulative hours that this group of organizations has provided to you in content will get you as close as possible to the finish line of deciding which among these candidates deserves your vote. Next, I'd like to introduce our moderator, and his name is Chris Kiergaard. It's a name that you should be familiar with. Chris is my esteemed colleague at the Dirksen Congressional Center. He's a historian, but he also directs all of the center's external communications. Before coming to work at the Dirksen Center, however, Chris spent 17 years as a journalist with the Peoria Journal-Star and also held the title of editor. He covered throughout his tenure local government and state government and federal government, really all levels of government. But there is nobody who I know who has a better understanding of the inner workings of municipal and county government. And so I couldn't think of anybody who's more well qualified to moderate this event. And without further ado, I'm going to bring Chris to the podium, and he will explain to you the rules of debate for this evening.
And I hope you all feel by the end that I'm still well qualified. Okay, we've got a lot to get through and a tight timeline, as Tiffany said, so let's quickly go over those rules. Candidates have randomly drawn the order in which they're sitting up here tonight, and just as last time, we will rotate who gives the first answer on a topic. Each council candidate will have 1 minute to respond to a question. The issues are familiar, so tonight we're looking for specifics, detail from each of you on how you will address these issues. It's an opportunity to set yourself apart from your opponents, to explain why you disagree with an approach, or explain why your idea is better. If you specifically refer to an opponent, I may give them 30 seconds to respond before we resume our regular order. If your answer isn't directly addressing a question, I may interrupt you to clarify. And in addition to that, if the discussion is valuable that we're having, I may choose to extend the time beyond the 1 minute cycle, give us more time to discuss it. Because we're asking you to offer up specifics, we'll try to allot you some grace as well. The first time the stop sign is raised, that signals that your 1 minute to answer has expired. But If you still have a little bit of detail that you need to provide to wrap up your answer, please do so. Please try to wrap it up in a couple, 3 sentences. When the stop sign begins to wave, that means you're done. I suspect our audience is going to reward those who answer concisely and provide detail. Before I ask a question, I will provide the candidates and the audience a little bit of context or data. Then I'll say something to you like, the question is, to signal to you what it is that you're going to be responding to. Our information is drawn from the sheet available at each of the seats out there and in front of the candidates. All of it is public information with sources clearly identified. Unlike audience members who got here tonight, candidates themselves aren't seeing it for the first time. They got it yesterday to familiarize themselves with it. They have not, however, seen the questions. We've solicited thoughts from many local experts, but the final wording is mine and mine alone, and the only 2 copies are at the table there from which I will be moderating the remainder of the debate. And one last reminder to the audience, please be respectful of our candidates and the fact that they have put themselves forward to be on the ballot. Do not cheer, boo, hiss, or anything else during the course of the debate. We'll give them and representative democracy as a whole a round of applause at the end, and then start the mayoral forum just a couple of minutes after we're done with this one. We intend to run here until as close to 7 as we can get with the questions that we have available. And with that, John is going to assist me in moving the mic. All right. Our first question, and beginning with Jacob Brisbin. In the first forum, many of you expressed your concerns about the city's roads and infrastructure. The city has already made commitments to repairs on Court Street and Derby Street, with almost $17 million in engineering and construction in the proposed FY24 budget. At a cost of hundreds of thousands of dollars per lane, per mile, just to resurface an existing road, you don't have the funds to do many major projects at once. And as the city engineer pointed out during Monday's meeting, you do not currently have the capacity to engineer very many projects at once. The questions are, where would your next 2 or 3 road repair priorities be after Court and Derby Streets? And where would you find the money to pay for those repairs and the ones after those over the long term?
Well, thank you, Chris. That is an excellent question. You know, over the course of the last few years, I mean, there's no question we have not prioritized infrastructure projects. I fear that probably things are costing more than they would have if we had just stayed up on that. I mean, our sidewalks, you know, we have a $1.5 million lawsuit that's been levied against the city. We have to rebuild those sidewalks. You know, our main projects, really something that I think that we're not paying as much attention to would be the downtown area and around the downtown area. We have a lot of lovely neighborhoods, but their infrastructure is not in good shape. I also would hate to see what's actually underneath the ground. We talk about our roads and our sidewalks, but we also have issues with our sewers, a lot of aged pipes and things of that nature. We need to be aggressive with trying to get state grant funding and working with leaders, regional leaders, and try to find real solutions, because there are real problems, but there are real solutions out there. We need to get past, you know, bickering over this or looking over this minuscule line item maybe in the budget, but working collaboratively with the region and the tools and our state leaders to see how we can effectively.
Your 2 or 3 top priorities though are what?
My top priorities for
Roads.
For the roads. Sure, absolutely. So I would like to see probably us take a look at 5th Street, make sure that we're all up to snuff on that. That gets a lot of heavy traffic, and as well as 14th. I think 14th is definitely a top priority for us.
Okay, Jaskiewics.
Yeah. I think we've lost sight of how to go about determining what streets need to be repaired, what sidewalks need to be repaired, and so on. I used to be a trustee in the village of Bolingbrook. We had a 10-year plan for which streets were going to be repaired when. Our public works department went down through the entire village of Bolingbrook and rated the streets. Which ones were okay for now, which ones needed repairs, which ones were an immediate repair, needed immediate repair. That has not been done here. We don't know, we're reacting, we're not proactive, and we need to change that, okay? I think 14th Street, Derby Street, all those are key, but we need to work on our side streets as well. And I'm not afraid of looking at bonds to possibly pay for some of this stuff. It doesn't have to be tax dollars coming in all the time to remedy this, but we got to start taking some action to get things done and prioritize what needs to be done.
Matthew Johnson.
Yeah, thank you. So prioritizing, I personally feel that, Broadway and then 14th Street is probably my top priorities there for those streets. We actually have enough money in the budget somewhere to prioritize those roads after Court Street and after Derby. Those are big projects. They've been in the works for a while. They just need to get done so we can move on to these other fishbone roads.
Where's the somewhere in the budget that you're going to find the money?
Well, that's fundamentally the problem, Steve, is we're 3 years behind an audit. Okay, so the money's there. We got to find it. And then we can use it and prioritize it, because that's what governing is. Governing is prioritizing, governing is choosing. The money's there, we just gotta find it. We're 3 years behind the audit. That's what I got.
All right, Karen Hohimer.
Good evening. First of all, I believe that we need to work on the sewer overflow problem. It's an EPA mandate. Sidewalks, we have to make them more accessible because of ADA mandates. We need to work on Court Street, Derby Street, downtown street improvements. We need to add liners to the old sanitary sewers before they cave in. We need to make some progress on veterans. We just received a $4 million grant from Ray LaHood got for us. We need to make some progress towards that. And then we need to repave residential streets. And I believe that once our audits are in order, the money will be there for that.
Do you have any indication of where that money is?
You could probably ask our accountant.
Fair enough. Rick Hilst.
So my top priorities outside of Derby and Court Street would be Willow, Broadway Street, in no particular order, and Park Avenue. And once some of those arterial streets get completed, then we can move on to some of our higher traffic side roads. Funding wise, we've utilized a good portion of our business development district funding. Looking forward for our fire stations, I don't see why we can't do that with our streets. We could either take out a loan or issue a bond and then pay those back, utilizing our annual revenue through the business development district funding, which sits somewhere right now around 3.4 million per year. We could also utilize some TIF funding and possibly some personal property replacement tax that we get. Thank you.
John Abel.
Good evening. I think my priorities for streets would be Broadway, 5th Street from Veterans Inn with that sports complex drawing thousands of people in a given summer. It's way too narrow and it just needs rebuilt. It's not made for the traffic it's going to get. And possibly Willow then. Funding for it, and like we've all heard already, if we ever get the audits done, the money's there. It's a matter of finding out where it's at in those 3 audits. When the CPAs have been back from the auditing firm. They don't, at that time, they didn't know what all they were going to find. That's what they're going through all this for. And so that's one way of doing it. And then we have to keep our legislators up to snuff with us and good communication with them to get things like that. That's how we got Darren LaHood to get $4 million for the engineering for the final phase of Veterans Drive. So that's one thing is communication with them.
Okay, Josh Hafliger.
So my priorities on roads would be Broadway, 14th, 5th, and Willow. In no particular order, probably Broadway first. It seems to be the heaviest traveled. So I think that should be the next priority. We also need to take a look at our sewers. We have a sewer issue. We have a drainage issue in some parts of the town where water builds up. So we need to take a look at the infrastructure and find out what sewers are collapsing and line those. As far as the money, as you've heard, we need to get caught up on the audits. I'm not scared of bonds. I am scared of bonds without audits because there's money obviously there somewhere, but we don't know how much. So I don't want to go after a bond and pay a higher interest rate because you're going to get nailed on interest rate when you don't have your audits done. So yeah.
Okay, we're gonna follow up on this for a quick second and continue our order on it from the beginning before we go to question 2. So we're gonna go back to Jacob, and I'm gonna ask, because I covered state, local, and federal government, there was always that pot of money somewhere that was available. What do we do if the audits come back and there's not as much money as you expect to be there?
Well, if there's not as much money, I mean, we're gonna have to look at what's actually feasible. Unfortunately, I mean, we can only do what we can with what we've got. And that's where I think state grant funding and other things come in. It's so essential for us to have strong partnerships with our elected officials. So that's what I mean. We just have to be realistic. You know, we can hope for the best, but again, this is why it's vital for us to build strong collaboration with our leaders.
Bob Jaskiewics.
We do have a problem in the city because, and you mentioned high interest rates. I did a Moody's credit report before this meeting tonight. The city of Pekin is not highly rated credit-wise. So whatever we do is going to cost. At the last open board meeting, I asked, what's the Pekin city debt? And not one elected official knew that answer. That's not good, okay? We need to know where we stand as a city financially. And so as a group, the new people will take over and do that for you, not the incumbents.
Yeah, certainly. It's always a difficult decision to make when you hope to have money and you find out you don't have enough money to fund certain projects. That happens every year at Caterpillar Incorporated, and I've been part of those discussions. They're not easy, they're not fun, and essentially you just got to cut certain projects that certain people in the organization feel that are a priority, but yet they're not a priority. And that's essentially how you got to do it. I still go back to that governing is choosing and governing is prioritizing. And you just got to prioritize the things we need.
First of all, over $90 million has been brought in grants in the past 4 years to the city of Pekin. It's been my suggestion that we have city employees write grants, give them a finder's fee, any grants written that they could get some type of bonus that would encourage people to want to write grants. There's thousands of grants out there. It just needs people to sit down and want to write them. So I would say, look for grants, look for that money, try to draw business into the community to help offset.
So if the audit reports came back and the question I believe was, what would you do if there wasn't enough money there? Obviously, I think Matthew hit on a little bit, you're gonna have to make some cuts somewhere. Where those are at, I guess, would be the final decision of the majority of the council that sits up there at that current time.
But where are they at for you, since we're asking this?
Priorities?
Yeah.
Well, I think the consensus amongst everyone right now, including the public, is still the roads and streets.
But for cuts, if you have to make those cuts, you're talking about, because the money's not there from the audits, where would you cut?
Well, you'd have to go through the budget and make those decisions. I mean, I'm not gonna make that comment right here, right off the top of my head on a rash decision, but you'd have to make them somewhere other than the streets and roads, because that's the highest priority right now. Whether that's personnel costs, I brought up at the last council meeting, cut and recycle out of our solid waste division. It's not being utilized by that many people. If you want to make cuts, you try to do it where it's going to impact the less amount of people. To me, that would be a start, and you just have to go through that list and make those decisions as a whole, as a council.
Like everybody said, we'd have to go through that budget line item by line item and pick and choose, hopefully not getting rid of, the most important thing is our people. Because you just cutting departments down to nothing, you're not gonna gain nothing if you got hundreds of millions of dollars. You gotta have the people to manage the money, whether it's physically putting the road down or whatever. But it's back to prioritizing again. There's gonna be some unhappy people because maybe their street was supposed to be done in 2026 and it's not gonna get done. So that.
So if the audits come back and there's not enough money or as much money as everybody thinks, I think it's prioritizing the roads and sewers. It's looking at federal grants, hiring either a firm or a grant writer, somebody who knows what they're doing to go get the grants. That's how you're gonna maximize the grants. It's also coming up with a plan for what roads we're gonna do when and how can we put a Band-Aid on some of the roads that we have. So right now we've got Josie running with her tail's cut off. And I think prioritizing her job would be a huge savings.
All right, we're gonna move on to our,
Can I respond to his?
I think we're just gonna move on to the next round. And, okay, second question here, starting with Bob Jaskiewics and rolling along. The council has one employee, the city manager. The question is, what do you believe the city should be looking for in a new manager? And what will you do to create the conditions that motivate the manager and key department heads to stay over the long term? If you've served on the council before, please also speak to what you've done to facilitate a healthy, productive relationship between the city manager and the city council.
Well, the city manager has to be a professional leader and motivator, okay? They have to have the skills to manage people, motivate people, help set goals for individuals, for departments, and be able to be the visionary that says, and hold each department accountable, saying, here's your budget. By the end of the year, I want you to tell me the positive things you've done with that budget. And when you submit your new budget, tell me how that's gonna change, if anything. But that city manager has to have those skills. He has to have people skills. He also has to have knowledge of city government and being able to find money and have contacts at both the federal and state level. Go back to the other question.
Yeah, what will you do to create the conditions for that person and key department heads to stay?
The city manager's job would be to keep the department heads to stay. I would make it his or her responsibility, okay? It's not the council's responsibility. But they're leaving now because there's really no leadership. There's no direction. There's no great supervisor for city employees. And so that's why morale is low.
Matthew Johnson.
Yeah, so the city manager, Pekin has a fundamental problem with the city manager position in that our population is not high enough to where we get the best candidate. And what I mean by that is we either have a person come in who is an up and comer, who is just gonna stay for a little while, pad their resume, and then they're gonna move on to bigger and better things. Or we're gonna have a sunsetter who basically wants to stay here for, call it 4 or 5 years and then retire. Okay, so I would like to see somebody who's invested in Pekin, Illinois, and I mean, what I mean by that is I want somebody who's lived here more than 20 years, went to Pekin High School, maybe went to grade school here, loves this community, and wants to be a part of this community long-term. That's how you keep people. And then to keep them on task it's pretty simple. You just have to goal plan with them. Well, I don't think we ever have a goal planning session with the city manager. And so the goals would have to be, they'd have to be specific, measurable, action-orientated, results-driven, and then timely, okay? And then his goals or her goals filter down to the I'll get there, the department heads.
All right, Karen Hohimer.
We have failed leadership, without a doubt. Why is this so? Well, we have no mayor, we have no city manager, we have no HR director, we have a brand new public works director replacing the one that left. Our economic development director resigned. Our CDVG grant direct manager resigned. Leadership starts at the top by setting the right tone with respect, dignity, and working for a common good. Do not micromanage. That's a problem at City Hall. As a city councilwoman, it is not my job to go into any department and tell them what to do. Their job, they report to the city manager. The city manager reports to me, to the council. Micromanaging doesn't work. Mark Rother came highly recommended by GovHR. He was recommended as second to none. He was extremely efficient and obtained countless grants for our city. It's a shame that he's gone.
Rick Hilst.
So as it's already been stated, the city manager's job is to manage the other departments. The council does not have authority to give direction to anyone underneath the city manager. We can only give direction to the city manager. I felt in my time up there, I've had plenty of discussions behind the scenes and gave my opinion on my thoughts on different things. Not always well taken, but straightforward in how I felt about them, just as they still are today. We can agree to disagree on certain things, but I represent the people in the public, and I speak that way when I go in and have conversations with the city manager. I try to keep some of them behind the scenes. There are times you have to ask tough questions publicly also, if you don't get the answers you like behind the scenes. I do my best not to spend too much time at City Hall and everyone's office unless there is something important to be discussed. I do that as rarely as possible. There's been plenty of talk about leadership and different people leaving different positions. Let's not lose track that there have been several people that were fired or quit long before Mark Rother was let go. That is being overstated. That has nothing to do with it. It all comes down to accountability. When you have a new city manager that steps in and starts requiring people to do their jobs, sometimes that's a reason why they're leaving.
Okay, John Abel.
Well, first off, we do not have a city manager. We've got an interim. He's a CPA. That is not a city manager. Mark Rother was a certified, licensed, degreed city manager. He went to college for to be a city manager. And you can't expect to put somebody that has no training in that job, into that job, and still try to do his own job, which he's a finance man. He's a numbers man. And that's why I asked 3 meetings back, did we do exit interviews to find out why these people are leaving all of a sudden? They weren't fired. They were, and most of it is leadership. As one businessman told me, the glue is gone. There's nobody running the ship in Pekin. And I think He wasn't the first one. They asked 4 or 5 to be interim city manager. He finally said yes. So let's get the thing straight first. We need leadership. The 2 or 3 that I've talked to that left, I hope they told their exit interview this. I left because of no leadership, not poor, just none. So it's a shame it's this way. We had a very good one communication wise, and he's gone.
And how have you worked to create conditions to keep?
I always tried to be, because we had so much negativity even in the audience for years, I tried to be the glass half full guy and try to find some way of getting good out of what is going to be a bad situation on a given subject. Whether it was going to be done, we couldn't make it any better, but at least there's got to be a way of compromising somewhere.
All right, Josh Hafliger.
So I agree with a lot of what's been said up here, what we need out of a city manager. We need somebody who's invested in Pekin. We need somebody who is certified city manager. We need somebody who can work well with others and create a team environment, which is what we do not have. We have a city council that will ask over and above the city manager, department heads questions. We watch it on public. We can't find a city manager because they watch our meetings online. And they don't want to come here. They don't want to sit there in that hot seat. And you can watch other city council meetings, and it's not like that.
How are you going to create the conditions that'll induce manager and staff to stay?
It's encouragement. It's education. It's making sure him or her is a team leader, not somebody who's willing to hop in there with them and roll up their sleeves and find the money for the projects and do the budget and work on staffing problems. We spend more time pointing at people in the past than looking forward. And we need somebody who's going to look forward.
Okay, Jacob Brisbin.
Thank you. So the big thing here is relationship. We need to build strong relationships with people. That's something that has really fallen apart. We've seen the city council sort of fallen into factions. We haven't built those relationships. I think it really does speak to that once the former city manager was gone and so many people left. I think it's abundantly clear that he had built relationships with people. And you can agree or disagree with his approach on different matters, but he clearly had built relationships with people and was making a collaborative effort. I do think that it was not the right decision to dismiss the former city manager with 3 weeks prior to his contract being renewed. That was, in my opinion, reckless because that really caused an environment there that I think was destabilizing and ultimately caused other people to be discouraged and future hires as well. They don't want to be in a place where they're on pins and needles. Is the city council going to let me go because they're not getting along with my personality?
And how are you going to avoid that in the future?
Sure, absolutely. Making sure to keep open dialogue. Even if I disagree with every single person on the city council, it's our job as the leaders of this community to still have good rapport and work together. I do believe that we can find solutions if we work together, but you have to have open communication and collaboration, and we don't have either one of those things at City Hall.
All right, we're going to move on to the next question and start with Matthew Johnson. Pekin's population today is just slightly higher than it was in 1970. While all other major Tazewell County communities, East Peoria, Morton, Washington, are substantially larger than they were a half century ago. We understand you each want to improve the city if you're elected, but the question is this: today, what would your pitch be to someone considering a move to Pekin? And how might you convince them today to choose this community over others in the area?
It's no secret our population is decreasing. There's probably a number of factors that result in that decision for those individuals and their families. But to touch on that question, there are some properties available in this town that are in a residential TIF district area where I don't understand all the legalities behind it, but you can buy that property and build such and such a home, and then you you get a tax relief based on the assessed value of said home if you build on that property. So that is one way you can influence them to just get here, is to give them that tax break. But we do really have a good community here. The Marigold Festival, that's a huge seller for the city of Pekin. If you got a young family, the sports programs are really good. Our Pekin High School football team really killed it in the playoffs. Yeah, they came up a little short, but that one play still resonates in my head. It kind of looked like a little Patrick Mahomes to Tyreek Hill there across the seam for a touchdown. So, there's good things in this community.
All right, Karen.
First of all, we have to have safety. People have to move to this community knowing that they're going to be safe in their homes, that we are going to have police and fire, the correct amount of people. They're going to have safe response times. There's going to be safe roads for them to drive on. The sewers are not going to collapse. We need to work on our infrastructure.
But what's your pitch today to somebody to convince them to move here right now?
Well, we've got TIF funds for people that want to build a house. We've got TIF funds for people that want to open a business. Where I consider Pekin an extremely business-friendly community. It has been in the past, and I hope to see that it will be again soon. We need to work together as a community to promote this beautiful community that we live in.
Rick.
So let me just clarify real quick, if I may, on a couple of things that have already been stated about the residential TIF district. We have, there has been several pre-development agreements that have been approved through that residential TIF district, but the actual residential TIF district still has not yet been implemented. So until that happens, all those other things that have been approved would be null and void. Things that I would pitch currently would be our park district. I think we've got probably one of the best park districts in the entire state of Illinois. We've got 2 good golf courses that come along with that. We've got a great JFL program for the kids growing up playing football. We've got the lagoon out there that people like to fish at. We've got a couple other golf courses around besides the 2 from the park district. That would probably be my main pitch right there, would be our park districts. Thank you.
All right, John.
I would say the 3 major points I would say is schools, public safety, and the park district. People that travel here or have family in, they can't believe a town this size has the acres of park that we have and the way it's laid out, with the lagoon being the shining star in the middle. But public safety, you don't have to go too far to realize how safe Pekin really is, whether it's fire, police, whatever. Schools, they're very good schools. If anybody hasn't toured Pekin High School or went there years ago, you ought to go through it and tour it, because it's unbelievable what they do have up there to offer to the students that would, to me, impress anybody moving from any other town in the country.
Josh.
So Pekin is the biggest, smallest town that I know. It's the biggest town where you know everybody. My grandfather always told me that, because I couldn't go into Ernie's without him getting stopped by 50 people. So I would also pitch our parks, the schools. The high school offers so much. From when I graduated in '97, where it was, it was the shop and the electronics class and the cooking class, or the home, I don't know what they called it back then, and now you can come out of there almost an engineer. So they have all kinds of offerings, the park district, like I said, and my favorite part of Pekin is the early mornings. And I have a friend who runs around the lagoon in the morning, And as the sun rises, it's so pretty. And I go to the First United Methodist across the street, so I've been outside when the sun rises. And it's beautiful. The park, lagoon, and all, the Marigold Festival, I love the Marigold Festival. Yeah.
Okay, Jacob.
So I would pitch us as a city of infinite opportunity. There's so much potential here in this community. We have wonderful people. We do have an incredible park district, actually thousands of acres. We are one of the largest in the state of Illinois, which is pretty impressive. But there's just so much opportunity. We do have a low cost of living. That is something that is particularly important. I mean, we used to have the medium home values here, but that can actually be a positive sometimes. People find, it's hard to find affordable housing. Sometimes we have a plethora of that here. We do have so much potential, though. That's what I always say to people, potential. There's so much. There's so much promise for this community. We have a wonderful group of people from the Chamber of Commerce, from our service clubs, is really good people. That's where you want to be. You want to be where people are friends with their neighbors and have a high quality of living. And I do feel that we have that here. Thank you.
And Bob.
Well, I agree. But I think the potential of Pekin will only come out with new leadership at the council level. Okay? And the reason I say that is if you're an elected official, you better be a leader. And even though we had some drastic things take place at the city, we have the incumbents here who did not step up and show good leadership. They're great people. I have nothing against them. They contribute a lot to the community. They continue to do stuff outside of the council, but they did not step up to be the leader that we need. And I think if you need to elect new people to change direction, change chemistry, but this town's got a ton of potential. We got great leadership groups. We got great schools, as everybody mentioned. Our service groups, Kiwanis, Rotary, Lions, all contribute tremendously to this. And you can attract people that way. You can tell people that this town is a great town. It's going to be a better town. It has a small town feel with great access to a large town in Peoria, so you can take advantage of both.
All right. We have two more questions that we want to get through here. So our timekeepers at 55 seconds are going to raise the stop and start swinging it at a minute to make sure we get through them in time. Starting with Karen on this next question. Pekin's equalized assessed value grew minimally, just over 2% between 2010 and 2020. Surrounding cities like East Peoria, Morton, and Washington all saw double-digit growth during that time. Our EAV fell slightly between 2020 and 2021, but those other cities all saw positive growth, which means a growing tax base or less tax burden per property. So the questions are, what are those cities doing right that we aren't? And how would you help facilitate growth in property values here?
Good question. First of all, we need to use those existing incentives, support business expansion through other incentives such as TIF, Business Development District, enterprise zones. We need to partner with others like the Chamber, Regional Economic Development and Tourism organizations. We need to be business friendly in promoting and in permitting and building inspections. We need to have that can-do attitude so people want to come here and grow a business that will help us grow our community. So if we could get people to move here and to open businesses here, then they'll come.
Okay, Rick.
So that's a great, interesting question, and a lot of different ways to answer that. There's a lot of different things that can affect your equalized assessed value on your property, including mortgage interest rates, including the condition of your roads. Crime could come into play on that, depending on what street you live on, if you have a lot of traffic noise. I can't speak, I guess, per se, to some of the other communities on what they're doing so much better than us as to why theirs is increasing, not living there. But I do think it still goes back to taking care of our streets and roads is one of the main things. I think if that, the condition of your neighbor's property, the chronic nuisances, and I'm being told I'm done.
John?
I think one thing that we all forget, we're the county seat here. And whether it's Eureka in Woodford County or Peoria in Peoria County, whatever, county seats draw, to be nice, the lower income people, because that's where the programs are to help them. They don't have to take a bus or to get there. They're already here in Pekin. So I think that's been, I mean, there's nothing you can change about it. You got to have a county seat. That's been a kind of a detriment in a way to Pekin. We've got, if you've never seen a map of the rental property in Pekin, you'd be amazed how much of Pekin is rental property. And it's just, I think we've got almost too much of it for the size of our town. And we need more people that within programs that can be incentivized to buy a home, build a home, whatever. We've been trying to get Habitat for Humanity to come to Pekin and build for several years. I've personally talked to them.
Okay, Josh?
So what we have here in town is we have a housing shortage, okay? We have an affordable housing shortage. There's 17 houses on the market right now in Pekin, as of yesterday morning. So we have a housing shortage. We have a lack of businesses. When you want to go buy a shirt or pants and you don't want to go to Walmart, where do you go? Your tax dollars go to East Peoria. Okay, that's where they go to Peoria. People moving out of Peoria, we are fourth in line. So meaning they go to Morton, they go to Washington, they go to East Peoria, and then they go to Pekin. So people who sell their houses in Peoria, we're fourth in line. Why? Well, A, we don't have any inventory, and B, we have a little bit higher of a tax rate, but it's not any different than Washington. And people who sold houses in Pekin, just a little over half of them stayed in town. So what do we need to do to change that?
Jacob?
Yes, thank you very much. Well, Josh just hit the nail right on the head there. We do not have inventory. You know, when you look at Morton or Washington, they have lots of new construction. There's houses going up right and left, whole new neighborhoods. That really does impact people's decisions. You know, I've talked to people who've relocated to Pekin, and they really like the community. They're from out of state. They you know, found the home of their dreams, right? That's why they moved here. But we don't have enough of those homes available for people to find the home of their dreams here in Pekin, because they're all being built in those other communities. So we need to focus on infrastructure, because infrastructure is very, very important, and economic development. We need to be encouraging more businesses to come here, more growth, making sure infrastructure is up to date, and also making sure that we have adequate public safety. When people are looking for a place to live, they want to make sure that it's safe. We want to make sure that our police and fire departments are safe from major budget cuts, that we're maintaining proper staff levels. People look at that, they want to live in a safe community, a thriving community. We can be that with new leadership. Thank you.
Okay, Bob?
I think Karen mentioned grants earlier. We need a lot of help beautifying our city in a lot of different areas. There are parts of the city of Pekin you can go to and they're immaculate. And there's other parts of the city of Pekin you go to and they're really run down. And we need to have grants. We have to be incentivized. They got the Beautification Commission. Maybe they can work together with the neighborhoods and say, okay, what can we do to spruce up your area? How can we raise the price of your home? All these types of things. But a key component for people to come here and want to buy a home is jobs. We need economic development. And I mentioned that at the last forum. We need an economic development director, or that who's going to bring in good businesses, livable wage businesses. We need an incubator, as we talked about the chamber working with one together. There are a lot of ways we can bring jobs to this community, but without the jobs, you're not going to get the people to come.
Okay, and Matthew?
Yeah, it's a shame I gotta go last on this one, but basically Jacob and Josh nailed it, is that we don't have the inventory, and thank you for that number. 17 is just not cutting it. You look at that, I mean, that just doesn't, I mean, there's more than 17 people in this room. I mean, and, 17 homes on the market. So Pekin is just tapped out. And, new homes are not being built in the budget for a young family who's trying to start a business here, trying to start a family here, get married here, those kind of things. Yeah, there's properties for sale, but I don't want to call them luxury properties, but they're properties that just a young couple just can't afford to build a home on. And even trying to build a home anymore in this business there's a home being built around the street from my home. They're still building it a year and a half from now, and they started a year and a half ago is what I say. So yeah, we just need to find homes for sale.
Okay, and we will close on this, starting with Rick. The Pekin Chamber of Commerce exists to promote the interests and to advance the opportunities of current area businesses while enhancing the quality of life in the community. For example, the Chamber organizes events like the 4th of July celebration and the Pekin Marigold Festival. In recent years, it's also taken on contracts with the city for tourism functions, which includes hosting community events like downtown street parties and Christmas on Court. So the question is, with its city contract up for renewal, how do you view the role of the Chamber of Commerce in partnership with the city over the next 4 years?
So I think the things that we've helped fund the chamber in the past for events is a fantastic idea. The Marigold Festival, the 4th of July, Christmas on Court, the downtown street parties. I have no issues with any of that. I think that's a great partnership to donate money to the chamber to help them out with those causes. That obviously brings a lot of people into town, brings in tax revenue. As far as some of the other things that we may be dealing with the chamber, we're going to have to take a look at as far as the marketing issues and website issues. We need to get some feedback on how that money's actually being spent, whether it's well spent. I know there's a revitalized downtown project that the chamber's involved in that's supposed to involve some TIF funding. As far as the events goes, I'm all for those.
John?
Well, in my case, I've been a chamber ambassador since 2007. So I think that if we're going to have trouble finding an economic development director like we have the other jobs we're looking to fill, we ought to talk to them and see if they could do part of the economic development for us. You'd have to go into the contract and rework that, but to write them off is totally wrong. We just heard the other night at a county board meeting, there's all kind of new programs coming for economic development to the communities in Tazewell County. Hopefully Pekin can take advantage of them too. But the idea of pushing and promoting economic development is very important, and it's got to be somebody can do it that's going to be there. And we had one, and there again, he walked away. So,
Josh?
I fell in love with community service through the chamber. Working at the Marigold Festival was an entirely different environment than I'm used to. It's a team effort. It's what the chamber promotes. During 2020, I don't think we would have had very many businesses left when they all shut down. The information that came out of the chamber was huge. I think they're here for supporting businesses. I think they should, honestly, we should look at a greater role. Without an economic development person in the city, I think that is either a good interim or a good solution, temporary or permanent, or in contract. I think they promote Pekin. I think they're positive on Pekin. They're some of our biggest cheerleaders, and I love serving because of the chamber.
Jacob?
So the Pekin Chamber of Commerce is an absolutely essential component to Pekin and is vital to our future. They do promote us. They are the biggest cheerleader. I was going to literally say the same thing. I feel that that's really needed so much too with the city council. It's our job to be cheerleaders for Pekin. We need a partner to help us out with that, and that's the Chamber of Commerce. I also love the channels of communication and collaboration that the Chamber brings together with our business leaders and to promote economic development. They are a vital asset to this community and so important to our future. So I would love to explore more ways that we could collaborate and build on that vital partnership to help improve Pekin.
Thank you. Bob?
I am definitely a chamber supporter. Prior to moving here, I belonged to 5 different chambers at one time. Here, I only belong to 3. I belong to Pekin, East Peoria, and Peoria chambers. I believe in the chamber. I believe the chamber is a great vehicle for either adding jobs, training new businesses, directing people to the right place to go if they need help, be it financial help, accounting help, starting up a business, whatever. But also the chamber can be a welcoming to new people coming to town. Because people will reach out to the chamber and say, where do I go for this? Where do I go for that? They have a great directory. They have a great calendar. They do a lot of things. But they're a great vehicle that the council needs to take advantage of, be it economic development, being willing to house an incubator for entrepreneurs, whatever the case would be. We need to work strongly with the chamber. And they need a better golf course.
Yeah, that's a good one. The chamber is, let me just say, the chamber is the heartbeat of the city. And it needs its funding. And the way you do that is, I still go back to my original statement, is governing is choosing and governing is prioritizing. There was things discussed Monday in the budget that just need to not happen. There was a discussion about this new tandem truck that needs to be bought because the old one was a 2007. I mean, let's think about this. How many people would love to have a 2007 truck? So we got to stop these luxury items. We found out, Mr. Hilst brought up the idea that we bought recycling lids. Why on earth did we buy recycling lids when we're instructed that we have to replace our trash bins or recycling bins when they fail? We shouldn't be buying luxury items just to do that. And so you curb the spend there, and you put that money towards the priority of the chamber.
And Karen?
First of all, thank you, Amy McCoy. The chamber is extremely positive. They're an essential component of our community. We must have them. They have a first Friday luncheon every month. They have a quarterly breakfast, after hours meetings. They have ribbon cuttings. They're devoted to the spreading positive things about Pekin. I think we need to keep the chamber. We need to enhance their position in our city, possibly work with them with an economic development director. They are absolutely some part of our community that we need to keep.
All right, and if we can now give a round of applause to all of our candidates. We thank you all for participating. We're going to cue up the Benny Hill music, and in 2 minutes, we're going to clear the stage and reset for our